I don't know if you want this on camera or not, but when the drones mate with her, they leave their male parts behind.
Long live the queen! Actually, she does live a little bit longer than the rest. A queen can live a few years, while worker bees only live about 6 weeks during the summer months. She's the most important thing in the hive. Every time you open up the hive, you're going to look for the queen or at least evidence that she's there. There is only one queen per hive, though, so she can be really difficult to find. Let's start out by talking about what it's like to be Her Royal Highness, and then we'll do some queen spotting exercises and see how you do in spotting the queen.
Queen bee's the single most important bee in the hive. She's responsible for what goes on in the hive, lays all the workers, lays all the drones, directs what goes on in the hive.
So, first, how does a queen become a queen? Any female egg can develop into a queen. The young nurse bees who are feeding all the larvae will pick out a few young larvae and feed them a special diet of exclusively royal jelly. That's the milky substance that the nurse bees produce from their heads. And while all larvae will get a little bit of it for a few days, the emerging queens will be fed a lot of it, and that will be their exclusive diet while they're developing. The royal jelly triggers the bees' ovaries, which is needed to lay eggs. So only a few bees with this very special diet will become queens. So I guess you really are what you eat. But only one queen can remain. So what happens? These long cells are the upcoming queens. They protrude out like a peanut, and so if you see some of these in the hive, you know the worker bees have decided, for whatever reason, they need a new queen. This will be a really important thing to be able to spot during your hive inspection. And here's another thing to know about these. If you see one of these in the middle of the frame, it's normally called a supersedure cell. And this means they're not going to swarm, but this queen to be is a replacement for a queen that might be dying or sick or just not working out for whatever reason. If you see these move more toward the bottom edge of a frame, that's a sign they're making a new queen in order to swarm. And they can make anywhere from 2 to 20. The reason they make so many of these is because when the larva is at its very early stage, that's the only chance they have to make a new queen. They have to work with a young larva that's in the hive already, and so that's all they're going to get. They make extra queens just in case there's a problem.
A swarm cell is normally on the bottom of the frames, and that's whenever the hive is either getting too crowded, or sometimes, it's whenever the queen gives off a pheromone that smells like lemongrass. And when the bees smell that, they know all's well in the hive. Well, if it gets really crowded and big, the bees at the far end may not be able to get that odor. Also, a failing queen doesn't give off as much. But even a good queen, they can still decide they're going to swarm.
Swarm cells will typically be on the bottom edges of the comb. They'll be between frames, down on the bottom edges. Supersedure cells end up being closer to the center of the combs, where the last place that the queen maybe laid eggs. If you inadvertently squash your queen or something happens to her. So you'll notice, supersedure cells, there might be 2 or 3 in the same area, because that was the last place that they laid eggs, and when they realized they were queenless, they'll rear cells from right there. You know, Swarm cells are more opportunistic. I take it the way that it happens. The worker bees trick the queen into laying an egg in a cell, because they're mutinous. they're gonna have a mutiny one way or another, and that's the way they do it. So,
But a supersedure cell is normally on the face of the comb, and that is whenever the queen's failing, and they'll actually make that. And when she hatches out, that's normally one of the only times you have 2 queens in a hive. You can have mother and daughter there together. until after the daughter goes out, goes on a mating flight, she comes back and she's mated, then the mother disappears.
Uh-oh, what do you mean by that?
Well, maybe she walked too close to the hive entrance one night. Who knows? But she doesn't stay around very long.
All right, this is a queen cup right there, and Jim, explain what that is.
Well, it's a queen cup, and bees make them. It's not a queen cell until it has larvae in it, and there's no larvae in it. I think bees just make it out of boredom in case they need one that's started.
What should you do if you see one?
Look to see if there's a larva in it. If there's no larva in it, ignore it. If there's a larva in it, then look to see why. Depending on the time of year, it may be a swarm. Maybe getting that would be where that is. That would be a supersedure cell or an emergency cell.
How is that different than a swarm cell?
Swarm cells usually on the bottom of the frame, but all things being, sometimes the bees don't pay attention. This is all honey.
Pretty.
Don't wear a suit, you can do that.
As these competing queens are developing, they start making a really high-pitched piping noise. Jim likes to say they're trash talking each other.
And it's like, and they'll answer one another. And they're trying to find out where the other queens are. And I say it's trash talk.
If you do beekeeping long enough, you'll learn to know what the sound of piping queens is. Piping queens they make a high-pitched buzzing noise that says, "I'm here and I'm going to come and get you," and they'll chase each other around the hive and they'll be piping in there. If you buy 100 queens at a time, you'll hear queens in that package piping to each other like, "I'm here, I'm going to get you."
First queen out, if she's acceptable to the bees, she'll go sting the other queens through the cell. And if she's not acceptable, the workers won't let her do it. They'll wait for another one. If two of them hatch out at the same time, they can fight. The strongest one will kill the other one. If the bees stand back and sort of don't interfere, but if they see one's definitely losing, they'll go in on the winner's side. I know a queen breeder that had 60 queens, and he didn't cage, put a protective over the things, and one hatched early and killed all 60 of them overnight.
How's that for some drama? It takes a queen 16 days to develop and emerge, and that's really important to know during your inspection so you can estimate the timing of when you'll get a new queen and when she should come back from her mating flight and start laying eggs. So now the newly crowned queen needs to go on a mating flight, and she'll leave the hive for the next few days and meet up with as many as 50 boy bees. 50. Enough said about that. This all happens at a drone congregation area. Somehow, the drones kind of know where to go to meet up with the queen, and the queen somehow knows where to go to find them. And I should tell you, it does not end well for the drone. During the mating process, the drone is ripped in half and his body falls dead to the ground. The most important part is still inside the queen, though.
I don't know if you want this on camera or not, but when the drones mate with her, they leave their male parts behind. And when they come back, they call that a mating sign. And all the worker bees are all, ooh, oh, it's good. They're like, they're women. What am I going to do? They're all happy about that. One thing about it, if it's inclement weather and bad, that she can't go on a mating flight, after about 10 days, she loses the desire. And she won't leave, but she'll be a drone layer since she never mated.
She will start laying eggs within a day or two, and then she pretty much won't stop for the rest of her life, except in the winter. She can lay as many as 2,000 eggs a day. And here's a really weird part. She has the ability to lay fertilized and unfertilized eggs. The fertilized eggs become the worker bees, the women. The unfertilized bees are the drones, the boys. I have no idea how that works. It's just how it works.
They're product of an unfertilized egg. So they only have the genes of the queen. So the idea is to pass the genes of the queen along, not some guy that she spent, an afternoon with.
The worker bees are the ones that make the comb where the queen will lay her eggs, and a few of them will be bigger in size, and those bigger cells are where the queen will lay the unfertilized eggs, which become drones.
She measures the size of the cell with her front legs. She can tell the difference between a worker cell and a drone cell, and she can select whether it's a fertilized egg for the worker cell or a non-fertilized egg for the drone cell. I've put an observation hive up this year, and she'll select where she wants to go to lay eggs next. I observed the queen go up on a comb above the brood nest in an observation hive one day, and she was just kind of walking around up on there. And within 3 days, they had made provisions to go up there and for her to lay eggs in that area. So she was looking to expand, and she directed them to where she wanted it to happen.
The queen produces a pheromone, which is individual to her hive, and the bees in that colony recognize it and they know they're home. When the pheromone starts to fade from a queen, they know it's time to make a new queen. That's not the only time they decide to make a new queen, but that's one way they know it's time to replace the queen. Also, if the hive gets too big, the pheromone might have a little trouble getting to all of the worker bees, and so that might be another signal that it's time to split the hive and they start making new queens for that. Okay, so you know the queen is super important, but it can be really hard to find her. There's some 60,000 bees in the hive you're looking at, and as you're pulling out frame by frame, the queen is running far away from you because you're an intruder and she knows it and she's trying to get to safety. That's why a lot of beekeepers go ahead and mark a dot on the queen bee's thorax because it makes her easier to spot, and it also gives away her age. That's because there's a universal color chart and you can see the colors that match up with different years. This will give away her age, and I can kind of gauge when it's time to start figuring out how to replace her. Also, if I've marked a queen and then the next hive visit the queen is not marked, I know that the hive must have swarmed and the old queen is gone with the swarm, and I have a brand new queen with about half as many workers. Take a look and you can see how different she looks from the worker bees. I personally can find her best by the way she moves. She's laying eggs in the comb cells and just constantly scanning over the comb quicker than the others. She's a little bit longer than the workers, and her wings only cover 2/3 of her body. Virgin queens are harder to spot because they're not pregnant yet, and so they're smaller, and you need to be careful because they can fly off pretty easily. Pregnant queens cannot fly well at all. Normally, the queen will be on the frames with all the eggs and the young larvae, not so much on the frames that only have honey or pollen. It's important to note that she lays only one egg per cell. That's the way it's supposed to go anyway. Sometimes new queens are sort of still getting the hang of it and they might lay 2 eggs by accident. The worker bees will correct that. But often, if you spot more than 1 egg in a cell, that means there's no queen and just an over-enthusiastic worker bee trying to fill that role. But worker bees are sterile, so she can only lay drones, so you're going to need to requeen the hive. If your queen is not doing a good enough job, you're going to have to think about replacing her, and that means finding her, getting her out of the hive, killing her, unfortunately, and requeening, just the same process we've talked about before. If there is enough young larvae and eggs in the hive already, the worker bees are able to make a new queen all on their own, or you can always just buy one from a beekeeper. Or if your bees are particularly nasty and they have a bad temperament, you might want to replace the queen anyway because all the workers get their temperament from the queen mum. The queen is an egg-laying machine. She does not leave the hive after her mating flight. The workers are the ones that make all the decisions. But if the workers decide they want to swarm, they actually put the queen on a diet. They feed her less and they chase her around the hive to get her some exercise to help her lose weight so she'll be strong enough and light enough to fly to their new home. See, it's not so great to be the queen bee after all, is it? All right, let's take some time now for you to find the queen. This is a queen spotting exercise with videos and photographs. See how long it takes you to spot the queen, and then we'll be ready for the next module, module number 5.